It's new table saw day. I'm a bit excited. Hello and welcome to this episode from Range Woodworking, where today it's time for a workshop upgrade. I'm upgrading my DeWalt job site table saw that I've had since before I started woodworking for a Harvey Alpha HW110LC 36P. Not that the DeWalt hasn't served me well until now. I start by unloading 3 of the 4 boxes before encountering the biggest hurdle. The saw body and parts in this box come in at a whopping 165 kilos, and it's in the back of my ute with no way to get it down. Firstly, I cut it away from this flimsy pallet it's bolted onto, and then I figure I'd just make a quick ramp. Should be easy, right? I use these LVL studs to mark out how it will work in my head. And then I threw together the miter saw and stand. Transfer my mark from the stud using a bevel gauge and... oh, that's disappointing. You can literally see my side. Normally I just use my circular saw for this, but it's got a metal cutting blade on and I'm feeling lazy. So jigsaw it is. Once these are all cut, you can sort of see how I think this will work. No, not like that. Much better. I'll tie the pieces together with a couple of screws and then drive home these 10mm carriage bolts as a bit more structure. And if you can believe it, I actually had these perfect pine planks just sitting around from a shipping crate I was gifted by someone at work. I'll fix it to the studs and give it a rough bounce test. It looks alright. And with a final piece, the best bounce I could muster, and a look that I can only describe as optimistic, it's time to give it a go. Now I'll throw my leg around like a synchronized swimmer, trying to tip the saw onto this grossly inadequate trolley before trying to get a good lever involved.
The next morning.
Okay, it's the next day. We got there in the end. As you saw, I was struggling to get it down just because of the sheer weight of this thing. Mrs. Range Woodworking came home and tried to give me a hand, and then we were struggling with the sheer weight of this thing. And then some neighbours were walking past and they offered a hand, and eventually, between us all, we got it down and in. It was a whole thing, but it's done. Let's get this open. Alright, so with that pseudo-dramatic unveiling, the first thing I notice is the thick, heavily oiled paper preserving the cast iron top. Now this is the Harvey saw without the gold titanium nitride coating. It's about $500 cheaper here, and I don't have the confidence to carry off gold. I better grab that instruction manual out, although it is pretty woeful. Whilst I unpack these pieces, I'll just clear the air. I'm essentially a YouTube nobody. I bought this saw with my own money, and the small collection of people that watch this will get my completely unbiased opinion. Well, unbiased-ish. Everyone wants to like the things they spend thousands of dollars on. There were a bunch of extra parts boxes in the body of the saw, and some I couldn't get out because of where the motor is at the moment. I'll repurpose these wedges from the ramp to lift the saw up whilst I undo these bolts holding the saw onto what was the crate. Now I'm going to want to be able to move this saw around because of my tiny single car garage workshop, so now seems like a good time to install this mobile base. For some reason it was really satisfying to kick the edge off this base and move the saw onto the floor. It felt like a big step.
So one of the most important stages is to remove this travel bar. It seems obvious, right? But what's important is to reinstall the bolt afterwards, or you'll never get tension on the belt, and you'll be wondering why the blade slips as soon as you raise it. For some reason, presumably because of all the extra parts stacked around the body of the saw, one of the hand wheels comes pre-installed on the machine and the other one comes in this box. Despite that, they are nice, heavy cast iron wheels that turn well. Ooh, I should probably get those last boxes out before I forget. Now, the left wing is cast iron, comes with the same well-oiled paper, and weighs a similar amount as a small piano. Once these screws are out, I'll have a quick feel along for any grit or burrs or anything that could throw out the two mating surfaces. These rails will... oh! Glad I checked. These rails will support the cast iron wing whilst I screw it in. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the wing is a few mil thinner than the tabletop, so I have to lift it up so it's flush with the top while screwing it in. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second when I use this level as a straight edge to check the wing is coplanar with the top. Now by coplanar, I just mean it's not tilting up or down. Once the oil's wiped away, the level is in place, I'm trying to see if any light shines through underneath. And in this case, the wing has a slight droop to it, so it comes back off and a layer of blue tape is used to wedge the bottom up. This is literally what it says in the instruction manual, but it says masking tape, not blue tape. Now once that's all coplanar, I'll attach this composite wing, but I can't actually make this one coplanar until the rails are installed. If you couldn't tell, today I discovered what coplanar means, so I'll be saying it a lot. Now, spin the rails round like you're in the Matrix. And then attach the rail the right way up. Now there are two sets of bolts for the two rails. The instructions weren't clear which was for which, so let me tell you. The back rails use the bolts with the Allen key, and the front rail has standard bolts that you use a spanner on. It would suck to get the rail attached and level and then have to take it all off and redo it. And correction, it did suck to get the rail attached and level, etc., and then have to take it all off and redo it. Now for the front rail, I use my delicate little shoulder to lift the rail until that right hand wing is coplanar with the top and secure it tightly. In this box, we have the big T-square fence with a high-low aluminium extrusion. And as I nearly take out my camera with the box, I should have been paying closer attention to the fence itself. It locks with a cam lever pushing a metal tongue that you can see here against the front rail. However, when not paying enough attention, this gets flipped up and scratches the top of the rail that may have triggered a few expletives from me. To set the fence parallel to the miter slot, I use this scrap wood that fits the slot perfectly. I then move the fence up to it and adjust the fence until it's perfect. The fence is adjusted using grub screws on the back, and then these front and top adjustment screws adjust the ease of the glide. The magnetic switch hangs from the front rail with these two bolts, and once that's all attached, I can drag myself off the floor and look at installing the blade and adjusting the grub screws until the cover plate is flush with the top. I really like this quick release for the riving knife. Just release this little catch and then slide the knife in. Oof, that sounded sinister. Just slide the catch and install the riving knife. The dust port fixes on with these 4 screws, and then inside the saw body is a hose. This hose catches dust from immediately below the blade and attaches to the dust port with this hose clamp. The motor cover, complete with typo, make sure you raid your instruction manual, slots onto its hinges and the hand screw keeps it shut. Now if anyone's still watching, they might have noticed that the dust port had a weird little bit coming off the side, and that's for the overhead dust extraction arm. The main body of the arm attaches to the rear rail with these 2 little brackets. The brackets are rubberized so they hold the arm in place and prevent it tipping over. One of these 38mm hoses joins that dust port and the overhead arm, and the other joins the overhead arm and the separate riving knife with a built-in blade guard. Now I'll raise the blade to its maximum height and set it to 90 degrees using this square. And I'll take the blade height adjustment wheel off and adjust the angle readout to 0. Okay, cuts are measured with a tape stuck to the front rail. I don't know if there's a better way to explain that. Never mind. Anyway, I set the fence to the high setting and move it up to the blade, effectively at a 0 cut. I'll then stick the tape down, aligning 0 with the indicator line on the high side. And then one completely arbitrary cut later, I'll measure the piece and then fine tune the dial to match. I'll swap the fence over to the low setting, rinse and repeat. Cut, measure, tweak. Okay, usually people say to avoid the miter gauges that come with your saws, but I think the Harvey Compass miter gauge might be the exception to that rule. It's a heavy anodized aluminium construction, has 5 adjustable washers to reduce any play in the miter slot, and comes with spare washers should they wear out. I'll tighten the washers one at a time where I find any play, but not so tight that it limits the movement forwards and backwards. The fence of the miter gauge then attaches to the body using a dovetail slot, and I'll position it next to the blade so it's nice and close, but not touching the blade for obvious reasons. This stop slides along the top of the fence to give repeatable cuts. It doesn't seem to deflect at all, and has a nice micro adjust dial on the side. Once these 4 set screws are released, there's a small amount of play that allows for calibration to set the fence square to the blade before retightening them. Again, another test cut to check that it's cutting square, and despite my best efforts to show it here, it is square. Then out of curiosity, I did another test cut with this thick piece of spotted gum to see if there's anything different in my results. There wasn't.
Okay, time for some first impressions. My first impression is that I really like this saw. It's a great step up from the DeWalt, which has served me well so far, but everyone needs an upgrade every now and again. Power, this has plenty of it. I just cut down this big block of 35mm spotted gum, which is a very hard timber, into this variety of toothpicks. At no point did it bog down or struggle or act like it was having a bad time. The dust extraction while I was doing that was pretty good. There's not too much mess around, and I didn't even have the overhead dust extractor on. I still need to get used to the blade guard on that. The high-low fence I enjoy. I swapped it back and forth whilst doing these cuts, and it was really quick and easy and offered that extra functionality. I did enjoy the miter gauge as well. Nice sturdy anodized aluminium construction with no slop in the miter slots, and the micro adjustability as well. Big fan of that, big fan of the saw. I guess you'll have to subscribe and stay tuned to watch me remake all my sleds and see just how much I enjoy this saw moving forwards. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, take it easy.